Welcome to the Loki podcast from Present Influence. In the Present Influence offices at the moment, I'm very excited to have with me today our guest, who is Maiten Panela. Welcome, Maiten.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Maiten is one of the most interesting people I've met in the last year or so, and she is a psychologist and a psychotherapist.
Exactly.
And works with businesses in business psychology. And we are both members of an organisation called Global Business Owners, which is how we met, a networking organisation. And every conversation we've had since we've met has been completely fascinating. So I was really, really excited to get Maiten to come in as my guest today. So Maiten, welcome to the Loki podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited as well. It's wonderful to be here.
It really is hard to say how much I've been looking forward to this, because some of the conversations that we've had have been about things relating to some of my big passion areas, like the dark side of influence. And when we got talking about that was like the very first podcast that I did. We had a lot of things come up that flowed from that conversation.
Yes.
And some of it related to things that go on in the personal development industry, and also things that go on more generally in life and business. But what does it mean to you if we'll talk about the darker side of influence and persuasion?
Well, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating topic for me personally, because I'm kind of concerned about some practices and the use of some people with kind of authority and influence might have.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about the responsibility that you need to have when you communicate in all senses through any media.
Yeah.
Online, offline, live. So we need to be aware of what we say and the intention that we have, the intention behind that.
One of the things that has come up from a lot of my conversations about this is how important it is to have an ethical framework to work within. And yet when we talk about ethics, I think a lot of people have a different understanding of what that even means, or maybe don't really have much of a clue what that means. And I know what I mean by an ethical framework, and I did get asked about this, and I have been a few times, and I think the best way I can think to put it for me is being good in your ethics is working to the greater good, not working for your own self-interest or your own personal gain, but for the benefit of, hopefully yourself included with everyone else as well, that you actually want the best outcome for others, not just the best outcome for yourself. And I guess that is where I place ethical consideration for the most part. Would you agree with that, or anything you would add to that?
I agree, but I would add, I think that it's integrity, the word I think of, meaning a lot of things, meaning how your consistency, how you are in your life and how you communicate with others, how you relate with others, and the intention. For me, it's a very important thing. Because when your intention is what you said, is to do something for the benefit of others, it's completely different that when you say or do something trying to persuade something or trying to influence somebody just for your own benefit. So this is for me is the line that divides the ethical work and the unethical work that I see a lot. I've seen that a lot lately.
Where have you encountered that?
Well, all over the places in my daily work with people in the corporations, which is a very big problem for the corporation, not just for the people. Because when you find inside the corporation people who behave in an unethical way, the corporate itself get damaged, because in the end it's going to behave with the corporate in the same way.
This is like one of those everybody loses, like one bad apple spoils the others, right?
Yeah.
And without, I'm sure you can't really give any specific names or details, and nor would I want you to, but can you give a sort of overview of a situation that you've had that maybe illustrates that?
Yes. No names, but an important company who has a lot of, who concentrates mainly on sales. And you know that when you need to prepare a team, when you need to coach a team, mainly with new people on board, your coaching concentrates a lot about communications and influence. And you usually hire external people to talk about this specific.
Trainers, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I've encountered in my last situation in the work that this particular person, this professional, was coaching in a way that it's not ethical at all.
Wow.
So the problem was not, it was really big. The problem was not with the personnel, with the people who were working in the company. The problem was with the ethics behind the speech of this person, which, by the way, it's kind of famous in the country.
Sure. Now, that person, if they happen to listen to this, maybe they would identify themselves from what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Or maybe someone who was there, but we're not going to name them. So we're protected legally if we don't use their names. However, what was it about what they were doing that you found unethical?
The way they tried to convince the salesperson to address the people, trying to force the people. So you know the notch thing, so you can push a little bit about something you want to happen. And this is the big issue. Is it ethical or is it unethical? But if you really try to convince the other person, not giving the other person the possibility of the doubt, not giving the other person the space to think about it, limiting the options and practically forcing the mind of the other person in your speech as a salesperson, this is completely unethical.
So that's like sales at any cost, is that?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Integrity's out the window.
Completely.
Just it's all about the sale.
Yes.
It makes me think of that film. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. But Glen Ross.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like it's always be closing, and it's always like high pressure sales. Go and get your sales, and no coffee for you if you don't close, kind of thing. Coffee's for closers.
Al Pacino's fantastic performance.
It's a wonderful film, and anyone who hasn't seen it should definitely watch it. But yeah, I mean that maybe gives you a great example of the ethics of certain sales communities and certain sales trainers. I know when I have done some sales training in the past, and several times it's been with personal development companies that I have been involved with, and mostly it's been very ethical. Mostly it's been we would never push anyone to this. Like, you give them the information, give them encouragement, give them what they need to help them make the decision. But we're not pressuring sales here. It's like it has to be what they want. So I know when I very first did that, there was some training to pressure really to get them to sign. If they said, I want to talk to my husband or wife about it, you try and encourage them to make the decision themselves. And if they want to go away and think about it, well, you kind of know as a salesperson that they may not come back, that people tend to make the decision more in the emotion of the moment than when they've had some time to go away and think about it. And that people will tend to justify their decisions afterwards, and rather than just go away and think about it and think, maybe I won't do that.
Because decisions are always emotional. This is something that it has been proven, tested, and with neuroscience and all the studies and research that we have today, we know how these two systems, System 1 and System 2, how they operate. So this kind of sales and this kind of unethical behavior, which, by the way, you're absolutely right, is not the most common, thanks God, appeals directly to System 1. So it's an immediate reaction. You don't have to think, which is System 2. So you don't have the time to think. And all the things, all the inputs that you receive are pushing you just to make an emotional decision.
Yeah. It's interesting that some of the neuroscience research that I've looked at, and maybe I have discussed this with you before, but one aspect of that was where they did some they did some investigation on people who had specific damage to the emotional center of the brain, that they actually were able to have a pretty normal existence, and you would probably never really know. And there've been so few people who've had that level of specific damage to that area. Yeah. There's not a lot of study there. So I mean, it is maybe what they think at the moment from those studies, but that the problems arise for them when it comes time to make a decision.
Exactly.
That if you have more than one thing to choose between, it's very hard to make that decision.
Exactly.
And that really, to me, just emphasised that whole thing that we kind of knew already, was that we really make our decisions emotionally. We do try and bring logic in for sure, but we tend to go with what we want more than what we maybe actually need on paper.
Yeah, we justify the decision afterwards,
yeah.
But the decision is always emotional. And you know, it was, I think that the name is Alberto Damasio, the doctor who in fact discovered and published a very famous book 20 years ago or 30 maybe, about this thing, about a person who has the brain damage, and because of that he couldn't make the most simple decisions. And well, it is a fascinating book that you might recommend afterwards.
That's absolutely. Well, any links and any useful resources we can include in the podcast description for people to go and check out. So that's all good. And we've certainly done that in the first podcast I did with my friend Aida, where we were discussing this. We put quite a few of the references in there as well. So it's always people like me who like to go and read about this stuff. Not everybody does. I understand that. It's not for everybody, but for the data heads or the people who want to dive a bit further into it, it's good to have those links and resources. There are other areas perhaps where unethical influence creeps in as well. And just before we started recording, we were talking about the online arena. And you have a few specific examples of stuff that's been going on there.
Yes, in fact, I was telling you about this situation. A friend's friend had a very important problem within the LinkedIn area, which is, by the way, kind of brought me distress in a way that what I told you, for me, LinkedIn was kind of protective place to be, which is not anymore for me. For many things I've seen lately. So as we said before, it wasn't like this, 5 years ago. Lately things have changed. And the situation was more or less the following. I don't know all the details, but the headline would be, this very famous, with millions of followers, a lot of authority, these people, these people that come all the time saying, oh, I make 6 figures, 7 figures, I make a lot of money and I have a lot of influence and I'm the king of the world. Well, and every day they show their stats and they say, oh, today I have more followers than a month ago or something like that. Well, that all the jazz that it's going on. Well, this person who's very famous hired this friend's friend to do a specific job. And after, 2 or 3 months of working together, he didn't pay her, telling her that he didn't have the money to pay her.
Oh, really?
So it wasn't listen, your work is not what I expected. That wasn't the reason. Or we have... And another thing, it wasn't the case of telling her before, listen, we are having problems. Are you willing to continue working with us, even though we are having problems? Nothing at all. the problem is the following, and this is the thing that I'm really concerned. This friend's friend didn't sign a contract, which is the most obvious thing that you do when you begin a new job.
Yes.
Why? Because this person, this influencer, has an aura, an authority, a big name that makes her think, well, I don't need to sign a contract with him. It would be kind of stupid on my side to ask him for a contract.
Don't worry if any names slip out, we can beep them out in editing.
But, okay, you can...
So don't panic about that.
Oh, okay, because I kind of worried about that.
Yeah.
So, but my friend's friend, she's devastated. And my friend, the person who referred to me and published this case on LinkedIn, so they all know who they are.
Yeah.
And this person, my friend, she's an excellent ethical person who's really concerned about this kind of behaviors on many platforms. And to discover this was shocking. And she was the one who told me I tried to address the situation directly to LinkedIn policy, and they were back to me saying, telling me, don't you worry at all, we are going to find out, we are going to do something, and nothing happens. And we know that nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
We are kind of alone.
I've had, well, I haven't had that situation on LinkedIn, but I've had those situations in my life where I've trusted people. I had one situation where I had a verbal contract, and I guess I can talk about it, even though there is a chance that some of the people involved may listen to this podcast. So if I name names, I will bleep them. But I had been essentially offered a job. I had a verbal contract, a verbal job offer contract that hadn't been formalised.
Yeah.
And I have to say that the lady who was running, this was an event management company, the lady who was running that company was hiring me and a friend of mine as event managers.
Yeah.
Now, we both got asked to go and work for the company that they were mostly doing events for in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So we both went to Hong Kong to work at an event there.
Yeah.
The event was a bit of a disaster, but that aside, we hadn't asked for permission to go because we didn't need it, and I didn't even have a contract, so there was nothing to really ask at that point. But this particular lady who was running that part of the business in the UK decided that we had snuck around or done something she didn't approve of. I can't help but think she was looking for an excuse, but she completely lost the plot about it and was basically told us that there was no job for us. Now, I know that I could have, because I had witnesses to that verbal contract, I know that I could have pursued that even with not having anything written down, because other people were there when I was formally given a job offer. But there's that thing of, well, is it really worth it? Because I'm not sure how much I'm going to get from it, but also because it's going to damage my friends who are still working there and that business if I go and pursue this.
But don't you think that people who used to do these kind of things count on that? Count on your integrity?
They count on your trust,
exactly.
that you think that they have integrity or that they'll follow through on what they're saying. But it's kind of interesting that particular person managed to get, I don't know how really, managed to get herself into a position that I don't think she should ever have been in, because she didn't have the qualifications or really the experience to do that, and she wasn't really able to manage that position. And as much as I sort of forgive and forget the past, and we are still online connected at least, I know that it was an unhealthy situation, and I don't know if that was the pressure of what was going on. I really don't know what the dynamics are, but I do know that I ended up getting shafted, screwed over but because of something that I didn't do anything wrong, but something that was perceived as being a slight to this person.
But this particular person or any other person in the company, they never explained to you why, or they gave you some sort of...
There were a lot of ethics issues in that company anyway, which I think maybe has something to do with this. But no, I never really got a good explanation about that. However, as things progressed, that whole company and event situation kind of deteriorated and eventually disappeared. And I look at it now and think I didn't jump ship. I was like walked off the gangplank just before the ship sunk. So I mean, either way, but I think I actually got out of some of the worst part of it, because even if I had taken the job and that stuff hadn't happened, I would have still ended up in the same situation of not having the work because it wasn't there.
Absolutely. But this is the thing. The thing is that we all need to think about this situation. We need to take responsibility of our actions. We need to realize that we work with people. So it's not just a matter of empathy or a matter of respect. It's a matter of integrity. So we really need to be self-aware of that.
I think these days, and I still want to trust people, and I still want to give people the benefit of the doubt. However, I must qualify that in business especially, I've been let down enough times, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to know that you need to have stuff written down. You need to get stuff on paper, get it formalized, record things that go on there, anything that's untoward or shouldn't be happening, and keep a record of it all, so that if anything does go wrong, you can come back and do something about it.
Don't you think that in the future you might be, I don't know, dazzled, mesmerized by the personality, somebody who's in a way so powerful? Because in the end, John, I think that we are talking about power here.
Yeah,
this is the thing.
We are, to a degree. Less so now. I would say less so now. I'm less enamored with people, and also I understand more some of the ways people abuse their power and some of the sort of hidden influence things.
That's good.
And really get more of a sense now of when people may not be trustworthy anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm still always gonna, even if someone dazzled me, if they did manage to do that, I'm still going to get it on paper. I'm still gonna take a step back from that and say, okay, well that's great, and they seem wonderful, and this all looks really good. I'm still gonna get it formalized. I still want to do things the right way. I'm still gonna get paid up front, or whatever I need to do.
That's fantastic, because I think that you have tamed your system one enough to be patient and wait, so your system two can elaborate and think, okay, I need some guarantees.
Right. It is kind of that mental training that you do for yourself of, well, if this, then this. Yeah. So if a situation comes up that seems really good and exciting, then, and I've trained myself to be, then take a step back, look at the situation, and look, what do I actually need to have here to protect myself, and I'm going to hopefully trust that things will work out and go well. But this would be like, I could take on someone who seemed like the greatest client, saying I've got this business and that business and stuff's going on, and I can pay you €5,000 a session, kind of thing. Like, yeah, great. Let's get started. All right, let's do a session right now. Nope.
What? Excuse me?
So let's get some money in the bank account first.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think this is very important. So we need to really, really, maybe this podcast can really help many people to think about lots of daily situations, not just through social media, but also in daily life. When you really you are being influenced without really realizing that. So because it is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Because we all do it.
I honestly think, and you being a psychologist, you are a good person to talk to about this. One of the biggest problems that I think is out there is that people do not realize how many sociopaths are around.
Exactly. Well, because they are hard to detect.
Right, they don't know what to look for, but also, I mean, people's idea of psychopaths or sociopaths is what they start films. You know, it's like they're going to come and stab you in the shower.
Exactly.
That's not the reality of it. It's to understand that these are people who have low to no empathy, and whilst I'm not saying that all people who are sociopathic are evil or bad, because many aren't. Many still are aware of that and still work to good causes. But many aren't and don't have that, and it tends to cause massive problems because they see people as playthings and their objective is power, and it really doesn't occur to them, certainly they don't care if people are going to get hurt by that or damaged by it. In fact, maybe that's even more entertaining if they do.
Exactly.
And
exactly
nobody really wants to believe that people are out there who are like that. And yet, there's enough. I don't know what the actual statistics of that are, of sociopathy, but I know it's high enough that you are likely to encounter sociopaths in your life.
Absolutely.
And I know I have. I think I may have even had a relationship with one before now.
I think that we all have.
Right.
We all have.
And this is another issue, that people who are high empathy are more likely to be targeted by sociopathic people.
Absolutely.
Simply because they're the least likely to think that there's something wrong, want to see the best in people, and have a lot of them heart. So when you hear the good stuff coming to you, you tend to believe it. You want to believe it. My grandmother on my mother's side. For all her faults that my mum has told me about over the years, I loved her. I was still young when she died, and so I didn't know too much about the background. But she did impart some pieces of wisdom to me, and one thing she said was, "Never trust a charming man."
Oh, fantastic!
And that,
fantastic.
I realise now that is really, really good advice. I don't know if she knew at the time, I can't go back and ask her why that was such good advice, or why you shouldn't trust the charming person.
Probably she knew.
Maybe she did.
Yes.
But to at least to have had a sense of, if people are turning on the charm, they probably want something. And if they're doing that, this is a technique that religious cults use in recruiting as well. Love bombing, right?
Yes.
So it's that kind of thing. How wonderful you are. How your skin's glowing, your eyes are dazzling.
All the time, without letting you a moment of pause.
Right.
So it's like bombarding you about how wonderful and magnificent you are.
Yeah. And we don't get that too often, and certainly the voice in our heads tends to not be saying those things most of the time. So it's a bit of a change. And at first, they start with a bit of embarrassed, but then you get more and more. It's like, they must really mean this. I mean, it's just coming and coming. All these compliments. Wow, okay, great. That's really nice. Wow, I've never felt so good. And you will feel good about yourself from it. That's what they want. That's part of an entrapment.
Absolutely.
And that's what people don't get. Maybe, again, you don't really want to get that. You don't really want to think somebody is doing this to get something. And I'm not saying you should mistrust every compliment you get, but if someone is kind of love bombing you with compliments or turning on a massive charm offensive, be suspicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, if somebody's all the time asking you for advice, meaning, this is another technique. Instead of telling you all the time how fantastic you are, how wonderful you are, I ask you for advice. So I empower you in a way. I make you feel important. I make you feel that you can help me. So you play the victim. It is the same. It's like telling you how wonderful you are, but instead of telling you that, it's putting you in that position.
Right.
So this is a big problem, and we all have encountered these types.
It's interesting. I mean, that was just making me think back to years ago when one of my university jobs was working in a bar. I had like several jobs to help me pay my way through university. It's, I don't know.
As you do.
I'm not sure when I slept, but you know, who cares about that when you're young? But one of the jobs was in a bar. And I remember I'd been in the bar for a while, and I'd even started there when it first opened, so I was one of the senior people, if you like, even though I wasn't that old. So when new people came in, I was often given the job of training them up or looking after them. And I do remember one girl starting and me training her up. And I'd say within 10 minutes of us first speaking, she started telling me about how she had been sexually abused. And I really didn't know where to take that or where to go with that. And also was, why are you telling me this? What possible outcome are you looking for from having this conversation? You've never met me before. You don't know me, you don't know who I am. Why are you telling me this? And I could only really come away with the idea of that either there was something really not quite right with her, where she needed a bit of help, which probably was the case, but also that it was a manipulation tactic.
Well, if you tell a completely stranger something really, really, really important like this about you, so it's like being naked completely, but not just be naked and asking for help at the same time, because it's showing you as the most vulnerable person. So it compels you to do something in your mind immediately. So it's like, oh, for example, I'd like to protect her, or I need to tell her something to make her feel better, or I need whatever. So immediately this person is putting you in a place completely inadequate.
It was doing something, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time. And you know, just for clarity, it wasn't that I didn't believe her. I was just questioning whether what her intention was in telling me that within such a short time of having met me.
You know, many of these people use true stories. I mean, it's not like they invent all the things that they tell. No. The thing is, they do of these things, and it is the same that we began to talk about at the beginning of the recording. So the communication, when you say something, what is your intention? Why are you saying that?
I think this is one of the most critical things with what we're talking about as well, in terms of influence and persuasion, and relates to so many different aspects of it, that sometimes it is just taking that moment to step back in your mind, at least, and ask, what is the intention here? What's really going on? Don't do that when you're watching films, because it will completely ruin them for you, because you'll figure out what's coming up next when you start asking stuff. Do you know what? I did a degree part of my degree was in English, and one of the things I had to do was analyse a film. Now I chose Blade Runner, and I watched all the different versions of it. I loved the film. But I had to analyse the film, so I had to watch it and pull it apart and not critique it, but I was doing a postmodern analysis. I'm not going to go too much into that. However, analysing the film instead of just watching it and enjoying it destroyed it for me. It just ruined it. Now I can maybe go back and watch it and switch that part off. But I did become very conscious that I kept doing that with films. That just got into my head of, why are they doing that? What's going on here? What are they setting up? Why am I hearing that music? Why are we seeing this exact scene right now? That you will pick up exactly why, because everything tends to get set up. And it will ruin films for you. I think the next film I watched after that was Pulp Fiction, and I couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't enjoy it.
It's a masterpiece.
Right, but I couldn't enjoy the film for that very reason. I was analysing every aspect of it.
You know, you have to make a pact with yourself. And I tell you this because it's one of the things that they teach you in psychology school when you begin to study at the earliest steps of your career. They tell you really need to forget about your profession. profession in certain situations.
Right.
Because
You have to
if you
switch it off.
put your profession all the time in your life, you're not going to
You'd be analysing
enjoy,
everyone.
because there is some part of magic. For example, with a film, you need to make a pact with the director. So you need to tell yourself, I'm going to believe everything that this person is going to tell me for, I don't know, for 45, no, more, 90 minutes. I'm going to believe everything. In that spirit, you can enjoy a film.
I sometimes think I might go a bit too much the other way now and switch off my
Completely.
critical faculty a bit too much, and then sort of like sometimes there are like really obvious plot holes or things that are like big mistakes or non sequiturs, and maybe I don't always realise or
But
notice
movies,
it. Yeah, in movies.
film is a fascinating way to discover to find out a lot about manipulation, a lot about, not just because of the director and the plot and the script, but also because of the characters. So there are some movies that can enlighten us a lot.
Right. I mean, even
Hitchcock, for example,
the
comes to mind.
sociology of a film
Yeah.
and the psychology of it is all relevant to what might influence you. Films, and as well as any form of media, tell you what is acceptable and what is unacceptable and what's normal, and a lot of it is giving us messages on how to behave and how not to behave. And that's what a lot of people, I think, don't see in films and cinema sometimes, is the sometimes moral messages or the subtexts of films as to what they're really telling you. It's like, yeah, that's the story that's going on, but there's another story running underneath it, or maybe more than one, that's telling you how the world should be or how you should be and how to think. And
it is very difficult for many people.
Yeah, and some movies are challenging those things,
Absolutely.
but some movies are pushing the conformity, I guess.
Yes, but for many people it's really difficult not to be identified with any particular character or with the situation or with, and then it is very easy for a manipulator to make the subtext to go to the right part of your brain.
Sure. But I want to come back to what I was saying about taking the step back and saying what's the intention here.
Yes.
Where it is most important to do that is in your life. Not so much when you're watching TVs or films, but you can try it as a way to practice
but
that.
It's
a good way to practice the skill. But try it in your daily interactions. Like, what is somebody's intention here? It's especially important for people who are quite sensitive, I would say. If you find yourself often feeling offended by people or upset by other people, it's a good thing to then take a step back and say, well, what is their intention here? Are they actually intending to upset me? If they are, it would be good for anyone to work on challenging that. And all you have to do sometimes is say, what is your intention here? What's the outcome you're looking for? Or even to say, is it your intention to upset me? Because at least you are then letting the person know, I'm starting to feel upset with this. Is that what you're going for? And they can perhaps correct course, or maybe that is what they're going for.
I could rephrase that. For example, instead of, it was your intention to upset me, I could say, hey, John, listen. I feel uncomfortable with this and that you said. So I explain to you how am I feeling. Because if I ask you, was your intention this or that? I am manipulating you.
You're maybe directing.
In a way. Because the truth is, I really don't know why. I really don't know if this person's intention was to upset me or not. I don't know what is behind it. Is a manipulation or not? So maybe it's better first a little bit of self-awareness. So as you said perfectly well, to take a step back, to pause and think, what is going on? What am I feeling? What is the situation? What's the context? Because the context always helps.
Yeah.
And then try to, if there is another person involved and not a situation, try to ask, try to make a dialogue, try to find out. And if it is not a person and it is a situation, maybe to write down possible outcomes, possible different scenarios. Because if you do that, you give yourself the space to reflect and in the end to choose what you really want to choose.
Right. I really like the way you put that, and yeah, I would agree. It's more important, perhaps, to say to someone, "I'm aware that this is how I'm feeling right now in this situation, and it may not be your intention that that's the case, but I just wanted to express that right now," and it gives them an opportunity to at least have an awareness around it and say, "Okay, well, that's how you're feeling. It's not," and maybe even say, "That's not what I was going for here. Here's what I mean," and to clarify what they're really going for. But I do think there's a lot of people around thinking that they have a right to not ever be offended by anybody.
Oh yes.
And this is probably the worst thing I see online.
Yes.
Still, I mean the outrage culture it keeps making me want to come offline. But I think one example recently, which is kind of interesting to me because it's like I agree to an extent, but I'm also a bit wobbly on it. So J.K. Rowling, you may have come across this, a wonderful author, the Harry Potter books, all this, but she came out in support of a woman who was transphobic, who was against transsexual rights, and that trans women aren't real women kind of thing. And J.K. Rowling was seemingly supporting that. And she doesn't seem to have backtracked on it or apologised about it. She just sort of gone quiet for a while online and stuff.
That's serious.
It kind of is. And you know, she's certainly not the only person. Where I do have a problem, because I agree. I mean, what she said was I would never support someone who was saying those things. And I think she probably, you know, maybe that is what she thinks, but either she needs to just sort of say, well, that's where I stand and just own it. And again, that's okay for her. It's not a nice opinion, not one I would support, but at least you would know, well, she stands by it. Or to come out and say, actually, no, I've had to think about it and it wasn't the right thing to do, and I was supporting someone and maybe for the wrong reasons, because it has upset a lot of her fan base.
I can imagine.
What I take as more of a problem is what's surrounding that. That when somebody does something like that, I personally would see it as a teachable moment where you can come back and help educate somebody as to if they want to be educated. So even if it's not for them, maybe for other people, this is a teachable moment. Yes. Rather than to come and say, right, you are cancelled, you're over, we're done with you, because you have this horrible opinion. I don't think that helps. I think it shuts down the conversation.
Absolutely.
With someone who probably isn't a horrible person or anything like that. You know, I think she's probably a very, very nice person, but she has this one opinion that maybe is a bit dodgy and or a bit nasty, really.
What an excellent opportunity to find out, to dig into that.
Yeah, it brings like there's an opportunity for her to come and either justify why she believes that, or to come or to learn why that might not be such a nice thing to say and why it's upset so many people.
Exactly.
But the whole outrage machine that comes up online, and like, okay, well, J.K. Rowling's cancelled, I'm going to burn my Harry Potter books or whatever. No, I mean, really, it's too much. It is too much, and that is, again, maybe that's part of the influence thing as well. Like, she is a person who has great influence, and she's come out and said something that's quite unpleasant. And so, you know, I understand that that's affected people, but, you know, she's not their friend, she's not their family member, she's a celebrity.
She's entitled to her own vision of things.
She is actually entitled to her opinion, even if it's wrong, even if it's unpleasant.
But you know, with social media, it could be a fantastic topic for another podcast.
Sure, yeah.
Because you see a lot of things of daily life, but magnified through social media, meaning that it is the place where all the love and all the hate, all the passions, all the extremes. It's like to be, it's like people feel they are entitled to many things because the relation is not like the one that you have when you have the other person in front of you. It's different because there is not the energy of the other person, it's not the voice, it's not the smell, it's not. So canceling all that and having just an image that usually is bidimensional, or even not even that the image, having your keyboard and the screen, it's like a field of all possibilities.
Yeah.
Also, this is why celebrities, because they are celebrities, sorry, they should have, I don't know, they should be more careful. I don't like the word should, but...
They're people, they're just people at the end of the day, but they're people who are more known by other people for particular
Nothing
things
more.
they do. And ultimately it may come sometimes to having to differentiate, at least in your own mind, between the person and an opinion they have that you don't like and the wonderful things that she created with the Harry Potter books. It's like, well, okay, you can still appreciate them. You don't have to, you don't necessarily have to like her or her opinions. But buying a Harry Potter book does not mean you are supporting transphobia. You know, it's like it's a very different thing.
I know a person who told me that he was going to burn all his Mario Vargas Llosa books because he was completely wrong in his ideas. And Mario Vargas Llosa, independently of his ideas, wrote beautiful, magnificent books. So I think that sometimes we need to separate. Well, I don't know. It is something to talk about.
It is because it's tricky. It is tricky because I know that I don't necessarily have I'm not the voice of authority myself, so I can't really tell anyone else how they should or shouldn't react. I just can tell you how I respond to stuff and what I see on there that I don't like. And why I think that is. I see lots of good stuff as well. I do see people out there who are asking the questions and seeing things like that as teachable moments. And with social media being what it is and famous people on social media being as they are, they don't always necessarily respond. So it's good on people for trying. So you do see that out there, but it is sometimes the loudest voices are the ones who are in the outrage machine and in the let's cancel this person because we don't like one thing that they said.
But it is because when you admire somebody so much, parts of yourself identify with that person.
Sure.
It's like the boundaries disappear. So when that celebrity or that famous person says something that is the opposite of your beliefs, it's like the end of the world.
It was disappointing. To me, that particular incident was disappointing. But to me, it's also disappointing when people who I really like as celebrities come out as being like religious or in some sort of cult or something like that. It's like, maybe a lot of other people think, well, there's no reason why it should. But okay, that's me personally. It's a bit disappointing. But I'm not going to go on social media and go, how dare you? Or all right, I'm over you now. It's like, okay, well, I can still watch them and enjoy them. It's like I'm never going to watch another Tom Cruise film because he's a Scientologist. So, please, I'm going to go. Well, okay, maybe there's an argument for it, but I'm not going. That's not really going to come into my consideration. When I go and see a Tom Cruise film, there are other reasons I might not go and see it.
Yeah, exactly. But knowing you could make the most out of that situation, meaning that you could create the space to talk about this topic. You could ask the person, if you can, why did you say that? I mean, you could open the space for communication, which is the right thing to do.
I don't really think social media allows for it, and that is also part of the problem as well, right?
This is the problem. I think that this is personal. I think that in these moments we are living, we really need to create more spaces for real people to talk in real time and to communicate more, not just go on social media. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't go, because I am there and it's fantastic, but it's like anything, it is a tool, it is a media, so it depends on
It's
how
good
you
and bad.
use it. But the thing is that we really need to be in contact with the other person, also because in the contact, when, let's going back to the manipulation thing, when another person is trying to manipulate you, life is different. You have more tools inside of you, even if you don't know that you have them, because the impact, because of what you feel, is stronger. On social media, it's different.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned from social media is to mainly just don't engage, especially with trolls. That you are probably never going to win an argument on social media. And whatever your opinion is, there is someone out there who will disagree with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes quite vehemently or aggressively disagree as well. And so often the best practice is to, by all means, state an opinion, but don't expect that you're going to get all the way support for that, or that it won't be unchallenged. But don't get into an argument about it.
No.
Just put it out there if you really want to, but also don't put out half-baked opinions. Which is easy to say, but after a few glasses of wine on a Friday night,
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I know I've said some regrettable things after a few glasses of wine before now, so we're all going to do that. But generally, I know when I've ever found myself arguing with somebody online, it always gets to a point I think, what am I doing? This isn't going anywhere. No one's going to win here. It just becomes like, you're this, or you're that, or or I'm right, you're wrong, and there's no real chance to have a proper discussion about that. And when people, especially when what it really allows, and why it's so difficult, is because people don't have to pay attention to what you send them, and you. If you find yourself having to justify yourself online, you've probably already lost the argument.
Exactly. And also the thing is that you said something really important. If you could step back just for a moment and decide to talk about your argument and your opinion, not with intention to win a contest or to win a prize or to be right, but just to say, hey, this is my opinion, I think this and this, so I can listen to your opinion. Okay, so you say that and that. Okay, so we disagree. Is there any place where we can meet in the middle, or there is not? If it is a troll on the other side, this is not going to happen, because the other person is going to go back and back and back and back and begin to insult you, begin to
they just want to fan the flames.
Yeah, because the thing is that to put the attention, so the final intention is that the rest of the people put the attention on him and not on you. So the thing is that I think when you find yourself in this kind of arguments, it's good to restate the same thing you believe in. So say it again. Okay, I hear you, but I feel this and this and that. And stop. And just stop. Really stop. Meaning close the computer and go out. Meaning that if you feel the pressure, if you feel angry, if you are in distress, close the computer. You can always go back.
Yeah. And this is an interesting area, and there's things like cyberbullying stuff that would definitely be interesting to talk about, but not really what we came here for today, I guess. And so to bring it a bit more back to what some of the things we have been discussing that we wanted to cover today, there are a lot of people online who are very highly influential.
Yes.
And we talked, I've mentioned before on one of my podcasts about Mike Winnitt. We talked about him a bit earlier, the entrepreneurs and the people who are doing this. And having worked in some of them and knowing some of the people who he talks about in his videos as well is interesting. And knowing that they may not all be ethical, but there's some stuff to it. Yes. And but there's also a level to which there's one of the things I was going to mention earlier. Sometimes you maybe feel that you can't really come back and say something about that person if you disagree with them. Now, can I give a specific example? I can do it and I can bleep it out. So I saw something posted from Tony Robbins online, and I really disagreed with it. And I felt like I was going to be, I knew I was going to be the lone voice, a voice that it's saying the England pissing in the wind. It's like, it's going nowhere. It's like, not exactly preaching to the choir. But the greater likelihood of me posting what I wanted to say was that people would come back and attack me or attack my position. And I knew that was very likely from doing that. That didn't really happen. I have a few comments for sure, and a few people saying they disagreed with me, or stupid things like "I'll pray for you," or I'll think for you. But it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad. But there's people like him. There's people like Deepak Chopra out there. People whose opinions I don't agree with, and there's a lot of them, but they have influence. But there is that thing of you sometimes feel that you can't come out against these popular people without knowing that if you do, you're probably going to be attacked, at least verbally, in some way.
But let me ask you something. Why you would like to make public your opinion about this particular person? For example, you disagree with Tony Robbins, and you decide to write something. So let's begin from the beginning.
But what's my intention?
Yeah.
My intention in responding was essentially a couple of things, really. I didn't really think Tony Robbins was going to read it, although you never know. But really just to post something of like, to have at least one voice in there that says, I actually don't agree with this. When everyone else is coming and saying, oh yeah, give it to them, amen, or whatever else they're putting up there. To have one voice out there and say, maybe there's a different point of view here. There's something else to think about. Not just going on there and saying you're wrong, because that doesn't help anyone. It's like, here's a different opinion.
So would you say that your intention was, other than saying your truth, showing that there are other possibilities out there?
I want people to think. That's really what I want. I do not feel anymore, at least, in life, that I need to disabuse people of their beliefs. I may sometimes speak in ways that might make people think otherwise on that. But an example would be in life. Like most of my family, my immediate family, are born again Christians. Now I'm not. I am about as atheist as you can be, and yeah, I could definitely say I don't have any God beliefs or anything like that. But I don't say that there is no God, because who could know that? It just seems pretty unlikely to me. However, there are many people who believe in it. Yes. And my parents and my brother and my sister-in-law would be some of the people who do believe in it. Now, if I don't respect their beliefs, if I'm trying to say, well, I'm not a Christian, I don't want my family to be Christians, I'm going to rip the family apart, because those beliefs are very dear to them. So and I don't even necessarily feel that I need to challenge those beliefs as well. I think it's maybe enough for them to know I don't share those beliefs. And to me, that's enough. If they want to ask me why, I will tell them. But I don't think that conversation's ever going to happen.
No.
And I don't need it to happen. So.
But you need them to know your position. This is important.
I need
Very
them.
important.
Yeah, I need them to know that I'm not going to church with them, and they do. They know that. So we've had to iron out a few things over the years, but you know, the relationship is good. But it's only good because we respect. They respect my boundaries as much as theirs. They're not trying to convert me, and I'm not trying to deconvert them or convert them to atheism.
But you know, this is fantastic, John. What you're saying is fantastic, and I tell you why. Because when you say, I don't try to convince them of anything, but I just want them to know that I think differently. It is exactly the same case that you were talking before. It's different the situation because
Right.
of the emotions around the family are completely different
Sure.
than the emotions around Tim Robbins. I hope so. but
I do too.
but the case is the same. If you speak your truth from a place of self-confidence, meaning that you are centered and you know what you feel and what you think, and you just want to share that with others, not trying to manipulate others, not trying to influence others, not trying to do anything but let them know who you are. This is a fantastic place to be, and this is a very protective way to
Right.
handle.
It is, but I must throw in my own personal caveat on this, which is something that bugs me online, and you know, is like one of my trigger points, if you like.
Oh.
That if I'm in a group online and I ask for a book recommendation on personal development or on business marketing, if someone comes back and says the Bible, I'm going to let rip. It's like, read another book.
You have with the Bible the same that I have with the self-help books?
Right.
Sorry, but no.
Well, I think, you know, like anything, there's good and bad. I'm sure there are good things you can take from that, but I'm not going to read it as a self-help book. And you know, it is really that thing of people are just recommending that because they want to push their belief, not because not because of that. Oh, this bit of the Bible's really going to help you. You know, I'm sure there are some great verses. There's some beautiful poetry and some great verses. I know the Bible really well, but there are.
From which place are they coming? And they are offering their thoughts from which place? Trying to convince you that the Bible is right, or trying to share another point of view?
It's also the thing of, you know, when you're making that comment, that is not the recommendation that anybody's looking for.
Yes.
There is a bit of that as well. It's just
you can tell.
What they call it now, virtue signaling.
You can tell.
It's like, okay, I'm just letting everybody know that I'm a Christian and I love the Bible. It's like, well, okay, good for you, but this is a serious conversation. It's a bit like that. So it's like, go and love your Bible, but please, in a professional group or some such.
Well, this is another situation. It would be wonderful also to have a topic about that. The boundaries about professional and not professional.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because we have, in my profession, I encounter a lot of professionals that speak from a place that I maybe strongly disagree, but just because I feel they don't have the background or the research behind to support them.
That's an interesting thing, because in my work as a coach, I get asked regularly for book recommendations, and nearly all, I read a lot, mostly audiobooks, but I read a lot, and so I nearly always have something to recommend, something that I've enjoyed, but I never recommend something that I didn't get, that hadn't been researched or wasn't great value. The books that I will never recommend are the pseudoscience, the stuff that definitely hasn't been researched or is really just someone's kind of half-baked opinion on something. And I see a lot of that out there at the moment. I will never recommend, although I keep getting it recommended to me, supposedly Dr. Joe Dispenza. who's a chiropractic doctor. That chiropractic is pseudoscience. Sorry to disappoint people. But, I'm never going to recommend one of his books, and I have read one of them, so you can't tell me you need to read it. It's like, no, I have, and it was bollocks, frankly. And I read plenty of Deepak Chopra books, and it's like, okay, I couldn't say I've got no value from them, but again, a lot of pseudoscience, a lot of stuff that I don't really support in there. However, there are others where maybe you get more value. I think if you can get value out of a book, then okay, but if you're getting value based on what you want to believe or what seems like a nice belief rather than what's actually true,
it's dangerous territory.
It is dangerous territory. So I tend to like things like, I'm trying to think of names now, so I'm going to write the guy who wrote The Luck Factor, and it's bugging me that I can't remember his name right now. Yeah, it'll come to me.
Forget it.
I know it's Dr. John something, but anyway, he's Richard Wiseman, Dr. Richard Wiseman.
Richard Wiseman.
So I've read pretty much all of Richard Wiseman's books, and they're pretty well researched, and that's one of the things I like about them. The background has been done, the research has been done.
It's important.
Yeah, I think it is important, and that this isn't just stuff that's coming from nowhere. A lot of the neuroscience or some of the books, like a friend of mine, Amy Brand, she's written some books around neuroscience. Now she has a medical background, and she's done. She's a really brainy person who does a lot of research. She puts in the hours, and she's really studied this stuff, and she studied how it can relate to be used with coaches. That is really valuable. That stuff is really valuable. The stuff that is just sort of throwing out, think positively, visualize it, and imagine all your problems have gone away and really it's dead. It's dodgy territory, and it is skating on thin ice in a lot of cases.
It's dangerous because you are dealing with people, and if you, for example, you recommend a book that tells, for example, that to improve your self-confidence, a good technique would be to do wild things, new things, try new things, get out of your comfort zone and try the wildest thing you can imagine. I know a person
who
who has a
what
problem.
you might end up doing.
Exactly, a very big problem because of that. So this is the thing. When we write and when we speak, it's the same. We really need to be responsible of our words. And if you talk from a place of research and study, you might be wrong also because, well, this is science. It's all the time
Sure.
researching and proving wrong or right. But at least you have a reference. You have put hours of a study on something.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Certainty is the territory of idiots, isn't it? So, it's the
Fabulous.
what's
Excellent. Excellent.
there's a famous Bertrand Russell quote about the sort of the cleverest people or lack confidence or lack. God, it's going to bug me now. I'm going to have to edit this bit out. But so people who are intelligent lack the confidence of their convictions, whether they lack certainty, whereas fools have bucket loads of it. and it's true. You know, if the more intelligent you are, the more you really think and consider things, the less certainty you're going to have. So if someone comes and tells you they have absolute certainty,
the more questions, the more doubts.
There's actually something wrong. It's like, well, you haven't. You're just kind of spouting off what someone else has told you, or what you've maybe been indoctrinated with growing up, because you haven't come up with this yourself. And the reason why you have to be certain about it is because maybe you're not mentally strong enough to cope with that not being true or not being a reality. Whereas in the science world, we know that a lot of the stuff, or probably most of what we accept as science, as scientific fact right now, is probably going to be superseded at some point. And I was like, okay, well, that was wrong. You see that already with people challenging Big Bang Theory and saying that probably isn't quite how it started. And there's some of the things that we've taken as scientific truths may not actually be quite so true. And but even again with then you get even in that community you get the element of sort of the generic wisdom of the masses that is hard to make scientific advances sometimes because the generally accepted model has become so much a standard way of thought that anyone who differs from that is going to be ridiculed and laughed about. And you come into a scientific community and say, I don't actually believe this thing that everyone else is accepting as confirmed science, and you're probably going to get laughed out of there.
Yes.
It's like, well, if you have good reason for believing that, you should be
Absolutely.
able to demonstrate your evidence and have it examined. If you just go in there and say, well, I don't believe that because, I grew up believing this, or because my nan told me that, or because my religious text says this, then okay, you probably deserve to get laughed out of there. But if you've actually researched it and
it's important.
tested it,
Yeah.
but people will close themselves off to authority because the general voice of authority says this is how it is. So when somebody challenges that, say, okay, well, that's not the accepted wisdom.
It is a fantastic conversation another fantastic conversation that we can carry on from this that relates to economy, social situation, and politics.
Yeah, well, everything. Politics relates to everything, doesn't it?
Because it relates absolutely with all that you said.
Yeah.
And of course, if you are a thinker, if you're a person who really thinks about everything, which I personally believe is the only answer to be in doubt eternally, which is a little nightmare, but well, I prefer it than to be conformed with everything.
I mean, there are people who may find some of the stuff in this conversation quite controversial.
Yeah.
Maybe very uncomfortable, or maybe really challenging or confronting for them, and I understand that, and it's okay. You could switch off, and that's the thing. It's like, if you really don't like it, switch off. But we have a right to discuss these things. But I must also be clear: I am not someone who says this is my way or the highway. It's like, oh, my opinion is absolutely right. I am open to being persuaded. Now, I have a lot of friends who are into kind of new age stuff and
don't get me started.
people who believe that crystals can heal you or that homeopathy works and stuff like that. And again, they are still my friends, even though they have these heinous beliefs. But to them, it's just the same. You're an atheist and you're a skeptic, but you're still our friend, because I don't belittle them. And they might find what I say about it a bit belittling, but I wouldn't directly. I can belittle the concept without belittling the person. It's like, if you want to believe that there are magical unicorns living in the sole of your shoe, by all means, but don't expect me to believe it. But so long as we can get on and have a sane conversation and the likes, we'll be just fine. That's my take on it. Or if you can convince me that what you're saying is true, have at it.
But I think that if you have a friend that disagrees with you, but you both respect each other, meaning that you are not trying to convince the other part,
Right.
you can carry on the friendship without any trouble at all.
I have friends and family who voted for Brexit.
Don't get me started.
Well, don't get me too started on it as well. But I have to be careful here myself. But I definitely did not want Brexit, but the thing is, well, we can have conversations about, well, why did you vote for it? So I have actually had a conversation with my parents about why they voted for Boris Johnson in the UK elections, when I was voting against it, and I understand why. I understand why they did it. I don't agree, but I can still respect their decision, even though they ended up voting. They don't want Brexit either, but they ended up voting for a politician that was going to bring it, was going to deliver it. And I think a lot of people did, because of how things have been set up. There are many reasons for that we're not going to get into here. But the whole point of that is, I can still have conversations with my friends and still be friends with them.
Yeah.
So long as they don't turn into, well, you're a bloody Remainer or a Romaniac or whatever. It starts getting into all the insults and
well, this is the bad part of the thing.
Right.
The thing that you, again, is the magic word is respect. The other person is not superior or inferior because think different from you. It's just another person who's entitled to think whatever he or she wants to think. The problem is when you try to convince the other person or the other person tries to convince you. This is the only place where we need to be really careful. But other than that, an open conversation, to be able to say what you think about things, what you believe, what you state for. It's okay because it's system 2. You think over what you feel and you decide to share it or not.
We were in a business lunch where people were discussing astrology and taking it very seriously.
Yes.
And now, okay, I don't really respect that belief. However, I still respect people's right to believe it.
How I missed that part. No, next time I'm going to be there.
Right. But at that particular time, I found myself getting a little bit too defensive around the idea, or maybe even attacking a bit too much, and so I regret what I said in that conversation, because I was trying to disabuse people of their belief in astrology, and I don't think that was the healthy approach, because when you do that, it puts people on the defensive themselves. So you just end up arguing counter to each other. The
confrontation is
and you then get more set in what you've said you believe, because you feel you have to defend what you've said. I don't know if you've ever come across a concept called street epistemology.
No.
It's a guy called Anthony Magnabosco, an American. I think he's American, maybe Canadian, but interesting. And I've watched some of his videos. I'm pretty sure there was a book as well. And what it's really about is really questioning people on why they believe what they believe. So it's not trying to talk someone out of their beliefs, although he is doing what he does as an atheist who is looking to get religious people to question what they believe and why. He's not looking for anyone necessarily to change their mind, although people do. Because a lot of the thing here is, a lot of the reason why people believe some of the things they believe, and not just talking about religion, I'm talking about could be anything, is because they've never really questioned it, and they've never really looked at why or gone too deep on it. So he's really working to encourage people to ask questions and to think, well, am I right about this, and why am I right about this? Do I have good reason to believe in the things that I believe in? And it's a much healthier approach now. And I look back, having went into a bit of personal analysis, because I didn't like who I was in that conversation at that dinner, of feeling that I was going against other people. Whereas if I'd really just asked questions on why do you believe that? There's nothing confrontational about that.
No, it's a question.
It's a question. And it's still okay for me to say, I don't believe in it, but I wonder why you do.
And the same on the other side.
Right.
Why you don't believe that? Give me your reasons. This is a productive conversation.
But the thing is, when you believe in something, the burden of proof really is on the person who believes in it. Because it's kind of say, well, why don't you believe in God? I don't have any good evidence to believe in God. Why don't you believe in astrology? I don't have any good evidence to believe in astrology. If you can present a case to me that shows me why there is good evidence to believe in it, I will take a look at it and make my own evaluation. And I might just change my mind. And that really is the position. If you come to any of this kind of thing, you think, well, I'm never going to change my mind about this. You're already closed. I'm not going to try. There's no point in us having a conversation about that, because you're in a fixed mindset about it. So, but if you're willing to question it and have the discussion, I'm willing to have the discussion with you. The only time that may not be true is if the thing that someone else believes is directly impacting my life or someone I care about or society.
Well, it's different.
But
I think that if we cannot create the spaces of growth, this is important.
Right.
Because, for example, you maybe regret who you were at that time in that conversation.
I spend too much time analysing myself. You know?
Now you say, okay, I didn't like myself in that moment.
Yeah.
So next time I'm going to try to be different. This is growing.
Right.
And this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And because we all need to grow all the time, till we die, hopefully. Doubting all the time, asking ourselves all the time about everything. Because it is interesting.
It is.
Because it is not always funny, but sometimes it is. And it is the only way to be a thinker.
For me
which is not to be a believer.
For me personally, and this has been true even when I used to be religious. I used to be a Christian and go to church and all this stuff. And even when I was, I still even then believed that if you really believe in something, you have to have questioned it, because otherwise you are just accepting what someone else says is true as the truth, and you can't. You have to examine that truth for yourself and see if there is merit to it, because there are areas in life where we are encouraged not to question. And it's not just in religion. There's many parts of life when we're encouraged not to question, and where that is maybe even kind of used as a tool to further a particular agenda.
Your emotions,
right.
our emotions. We are not supposed to ask ourselves what we feel. Our sexuality, we are not supposed to ask ourselves what we like,
right,
and with who we like that. These are things like our taboo. We are not supposed to question.
Yeah, there's so many different.
If
so
you
many
question
different
yourself, you might end up discovering
you
yourself.
don't know where you might end up.
But it's fantastic, and it's it's a threat for some.
Doesn't that really bring up the reality then of why people often don't? Is because there's a fear then of where it might take them, of what doors that might open up, and people do generally, people like you and me would look at it on, well, actually, maybe from experience tells us it's an exciting journey of self-discovery, and knowing that even when you feel like you know yourself now, you're still going to change, you're still going to develop and grow in the future. Who you are, who I am, who you are next year is going to be different to who you are right now here today while we're recording this.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because we will have learned more, we will have experienced more. Somebody may have come along who changed your belief on a certain thing, or
and because our cells change, and also our neurons.
Yeah.
So hopefully we are going to be different.
And it should be sought for. One of the it's interesting that this is a book that I came across more recently than I'd care to admit, because I think it's such a foundational book. Is Dr. Carol Dweck's book on mindset. Have you ever read it?
Yeah.
An incredible book.
Yeah.
And really clarified for me the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset in a revolutionary way. That I was aware of some of the principles, but the book just made it so clear for me, and to really understand and see it more in myself and in other people, where you maybe have fixed mindset thinking and where you're in growth, and to aim for the growth mindset, which means you may not be right, and actually
all the time
that is a good thing. It's actually better if you're not, but don't try to defend or protect being right. Accept that other people have a version of right, and listen, because you might learn something.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing of like, well, does it matter to you whether what you believe is true or not?
But people sometimes are afraid to get lost. And it would be wonderful to let them know that they are not going to get lost at all. It's the opposite.
They get
exactly.
found.
Exactly.
It is. is an interesting thing in life. I can nearly always tell when I meet someone whether they've done some work on themselves in terms of some growth, learning, development, personal, professional, otherwise. Where I guess maybe meditation and things like that as well. People who have really considered things in life, as to the difference of just to how open I guess they are, and what you can talk about with them, and I'm always much more magnetically drawn to people who are more open, who have more of a growth mindset than I will be to people in a fixed mindset. That doesn't mean I'm going to ignore those other people. It just means I know I'm going to find that a bit more challenging. And so I will, like I say, always have those conversations, even sometimes when they're difficult or challenging. But for my sort of comfort, of the people who I want to most connect with, is people who have more of that growth mindset and energy.
We all do that.
Yeah.
I mean that we all tend to try to connect with people that, if we like to think about things and like to challenge ourselves, we are going to enjoy conversations that challenge our thoughts and minds, and that we can talk about almost everything. It's like a...
Yeah, I mean, I just think, have you heard of Milton Erickson?
Yeah.
Right, I'm sure you have. And so the father of hypnotherapy, really, and to the greater degree.
Another podcast.
Yeah, entirely. A very interesting topic.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he said was that he believed that everyone is in a trance, and that people are either in a trance of empowerment or a trance of disempowerment. And so his job was to help move people from the trance of disempowerment into the trance of empowerment. Interesting, right?
Interesting.
And so I
like a Messiah.
Yeah.
He's going
to save people.
you.
Well, yeah, I guess you could take it that way, but I would take it more from a sense of, if you're empowering someone, you're not saving them. If you're really empowering someone, you're giving them what they need to save themselves. That's how I would look at it, because that's a big differential that I make in my own coaching. I'm not there to save somebody. I'm not there to solve somebody else's problems. That might have been why I got into coaching. Although there is some truth to the thing of, like, we get into these things because we often are dealing with what we need to help ourselves with. Right?
I got into psychology 30 years ago. Yeah, maybe.
I think there's maybe some truth to that.
Yeah.
But I know that when I first started coaching, I did think that it was my responsibility for people to have success and for people to get results. And it took a while for me to get that it wasn't, but it also took, maybe I shouldn't be admitting this on a podcast, but it also took a client who got a little bit obsessive to wake me up and sending me, like, trying to make a stupid decision as to should I buy sausages or bacon in the supermarket kind of thing. Coach, what should I do? It got to that sort of level.
Oh my God.
So that every day I was getting multiple messages of, what decision should I make? And I was like, okay, this has to stop. And this, it didn't go on for too long, but I mean, enough days that there's a big problem here.
Yes.
And so we had a conversation, and where I said, I cannot carry on with you as my client, because I am not here to do this for you. This is really disempowering for you. You have to be able to make your own decisions. And I feel that the whole time you're coming to me to make them, that's not going to happen. And so I don't know if that was the right way to go. This was like my very early days in coaching, but it felt like the right thing at the time to do that, and to just say, let's just...
And it probably was.
Maybe it probably was, because I didn't know what to do.
Exactly.
So the best thing was to just...
You didn't have the right tools at the time.
Yeah, I didn't. I might handle things a bit differently now, and probably would draw the boundaries a lot sooner as well in the relationship of coaching somebody. But at the time, that hadn't been the case. But I was also aware, it made me aware that I had thought that was down to me to, maybe I was telling rather than empowering.
Yeah.
And to understand that was disempowering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Taking their power away.
I agree.
And I even though I've learned hypnosis and NLP and things like that, would only ever use those things in a way that helps people to empower themselves, and not in a way that is going to get somebody to do something that they don't really want to do, or that they wouldn't, that they couldn't be led to themselves if they really had time to think about it.
Interesting. I always was more attracted by the other theories, and by the other theories I said the very fundamental theories, so Freud, Lacan, so the very first psychoanalyst, and then the Gestalt, which has fantastic theories.
Gestalt therapy is young, right?
No. Jung was contemporary of Freud.
Okay.
And the Gestalt therapy is Perls, Fritz Perls. And it's fantastic. I would love to tell you about this because, it is fantastic theory. But talking about theories and talking about what is right and wrong, which is very, 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 a very delicate line there. Because there is also in our works, you as a coach, me as a psychologist, because it's the same point. It is a narcissistical point. So you have two areas. The client, when asked for help, in which position of why is he or she asking for help? What is really he or she asking for? This is one thing. The other part is what it is about you when you know that you are helping that person. What is going on inside of you, and what do you do about that? Because this is beyond empowering. It's also a relation between you and you. You know what I mean? Which is really, really delicate.
I don't know if we can honestly empower or help each other without projecting some part of ourselves into that. I don't know if that's possible, because we'd have to take ourselves out from the equation to be able to analyse that, and we can never really do that. So it's
That's
hard
why
to
we
say.
need another psychologist or another coach who does the work.
Right, yeah.
Of course.
I guess so. It's interesting. One of the things that you said to me in a conversation we had a while back when we had dinner by ourselves that time was about certain personal development gurus who maybe convince people that their problems are healed, gone away, and
in a minute.
Yeah, in 2 minutes you've dealt with deep psychological trauma or some such. Now, it got me thinking. I will be honest with you, that really got me thinking, because at first my response was perhaps more what I had been trained to in those sorts of events of, well, if you believe it's gone, maybe it has. And then I got to thinking about it and thinking about how many of my clients have actually come back to me over the years and said, this stuff has come back up for me again, I thought I'd dealt with it. And that is really common. And I can only say, this is my experience, so I'm not saying it's this or that, I'm just saying that is my experience when I really thought about it and got, and I can probably say that from some of my experience, things that I thought I had dealt with and were pretty much done have maybe come up again in the future, that, I thought I'd worked through that, I thought I'd figured it all out. And that, when I really got to think about it, came back to what you said and thought, actually, I really get what you say now with that, as to, do you really think that you have dealt with something that may be really hardwired into your neurology that 2 minutes of NLP is probably not going to get rid of? Tell me more about this.
Well, because there are, for me, it's like there are layers. So there are certain topics or things in a more superficial layer. So maybe you can fix that or adjust that or change the course of that in a more or less speed way. But because the roots of that particular situation or that particular problem were not deep enough, when I say deep enough, I mean maybe it wasn't a trauma. Maybe it wasn't something that was in your DNA. Maybe it wasn't. So it depends on the topic. It's not all the same.
Right.
So I do believe that we can really help a lot on certain topics, on certain levels. But I still, like Freud did, I still ask myself about deeply rooted problems. The problems that maybe are really recorded in your DNA. So we can go back thousands of years, which is another podcast again.
We're going to have to do a whole series together, I think.
But we also have those traumas that we had when we were infants, or when we were teenagers, or when we were young adults, or in my case, when I was an adult, or last year. I mean, the wound that you can have at an emotional level varies. So this is why when I see a coach treating very, very delicate problems, delicate matters, like, for instance, a rape, talking about that publicly in front of 6,000 people, making the person talk about that publicly. So the person is in some kind of very particular state, because the authority of the coach is so bright, so high, that the person goes into this.
You're not going to go against the person who's the center of attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you go down into that tunnel that maybe you were willing to, or maybe not that deep. And you find yourself talking about things that hurt you very deeply. Maybe even talking about things that are a crime. So we are talking about two main things, the brain and the law. Talk about those things in a public space and making the person be completely naked about that situation, and then revert the situation with 3 or 4 magical phrases, and then pretend that that person is cured.
Right, it's kind of, it's a bit like, I've got a technique for that, rather than actually
because we don't know the damage that we can cause on that person, on that particular situation. I'm very serious about that. Very, very serious. I think.
Are you aware of cases where that's happened, where someone has had that kind of intervention in a public forum, or even privately with a coach or hypnotherapist or somebody who's like, you're cured kind of thing, where it's come back? Are you aware of specific cases of that?
I had a patient many years ago that had this sort of experience, and of course this person had a very profound trauma, very profound, and of course it wasn't cured.
Yeah.
Because the question itself is, we, and I'm speaking as a scientist, I'm speaking as a psychologist, I'm speaking as a human being, we don't know if we can cure that. What we know is that we can share tools to deal with that, which is different from cure.
Would you put it as an equivalent to a doctor prescribing a placebo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is another very interesting topic, Because the thing is that the placebo effect is, what about the person who's taking the placebo? And is the person willing to take the placebo? Even doubting about it.
Placebos are interesting. There is some study.
It calms you in a way.
There is some study on it, and there is, well, you know, there's whole professions of pseudoscience that are built up around it. And I think Gwyneth Paltrow is making quite a lot of money from it as well with what she's doing. But
we are going to be
we're
so
going to be
sued
yeah.
with this.
I might bleep some bits.
Don't talk about goop.
Yeah. But you know, it is that thing of do placebos work? And in some instances, yes. And the research which is happening now,
Yeah.
and I think it has taken quite a long time to get the medical profession taking that idea seriously enough to investigate it. The research suggests that yes, and that some people are even genetically more predisposed to placebos than other people.
Yeah.
And that in itself is interesting. The fact that we might well end up with, probably will end up with a situation not too far in the future where medication is designed specifically to your DNA and genome and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
I think that's on the way.
Yes,
That's the way things are heading.
Absolutely.
But also whether you get a placebo or not, which obviously you can't know about because that's the whole point with placebos. There are so many things I find incredible about it, and to some degree, it would be a bit like some of these sort of interventions that we talk about. A bit similar to going to like a faith healer, for example, where they maybe put your hands on you and say, you're cured, or my energy runs through you, and now you're healed. And well, there may be an element to which that might actually work for some people, but for others it might not. And this is where it gets into a very grey area for me of, for some people that might do it, but I also get what you're saying of that for some people it might not. In fact, for some people it's just masking it and potentially making things worse.
Exactly.
It's
might be the opposite.
Then becomes a time bomb waiting to happen. What then do you do? Do you not do it because there's a whole load of people who it would work for, and some people who it won't? Or do you not do it because of the people who it won't work for? This is the thing with like medicines, for example. When a pharmaceutical drug gets developed and they will test it, they know that some people are going to have side effects. Some people are going to be affected negatively more than others, and in some cases, some people may die from the side effects. But if the vast majority of people who take it are fine and actually helped by the medication, then do you not put the medication out there because there's a few people who is going to adversely affect? This is where we start to get into grey areas of ethics, I think.
Yes, exactly.
And this is why I know that I can say, for me in my life, NLP and personal development has really helped me. And I know other people who it's kind of screwed them up and has really created some problems for them. They put pressure on themselves and whatever, maybe even had a lot of bad advice or people take advantage of them. And so, I understand that as well. But can you say, well, it has to stop because, because for these people it's so negative, whereas for other people it may not be? Well,
this is a very difficult topic. Also because I don't think that we can talk about it in a general way.
You can
I think
talk
that
about
we
specific
need,
cases,
yes,
right?
because we need all the data. We need the context, the people involved, their beliefs, their story, their health. So we need to know a lot of things. We can't say there's not one size that fits all in this, for me.
But a lot of this stuff does tie into the influence, because this is the thing of like a doctor giving you a placebo You take the tablet, and for some people it works. You know, they do
Bach flowers.
they do test these things on control groups. So for some
Yeah.
people a placebo will work, for some people it won't. And you know, if the placebo works in a certain situation on enough people, whatever. The whole thing with that is, you know, it's the authority of the doctor ultimately, and also maybe the authority of the medical profession behind that, and the pharmaceutical development behind that.
Exactly.
In other situations that we're kind of talking about as well, it's the authority of the person on the stage, or the therapist or coach that you're working with, that you are taking, putting yourself in the hands of and saying you have the authority here. And this maybe relates to Cialdini's thing of authority, of when somebody has authority, you know, people are often all too happy to take away their own personal responsibility and hand it on to someone else. Say, okay, you're responsible for this now. And if that's the person that then says you are now cured of this, and you really want to believe it, and you're going to do everything you can to convince yourself that has happened because of their authority.
Yes, but there are a lot of questions around that,
Yeah.
because you can ask yourself, okay, but is this a real solution, first? Second, is that the only solution? There is no other way to deal with that particular situation. Also, is it going to last? The test of time. So there are a lot of questions.
Now, I would say, if somebody's asking you for a lot of money for that kind of intervention, they're scamming you. Get out of there. I mean, that's just the thing. And this is, I guess, there's so many different areas to talk to, but that is kind of another area of how much some people charge for this kind of stuff as well. Yeah. And that ties into the authority part as well, in terms of the influence, because on top of that, whatever money you've invested into it, you're a bit more leveraged for this to work, for this to come good.
Absolutely, because you have paid a lot of money for that solution.
So when somebody is promising you that your life is going to be transformed, your health is going to be transformed, everything is going to be transformed because you've come to this event and you've invested. God knows how much they charge for some of these things now, but and I get as well.
It's outrageous.
I think it's a bit of a gouge, you know. It's a bit of a scam. To me, there's a bit of a scam behind it. But that's my ethics and my morality around it. That I could be wrong. That I do tend to think that people are taking advantage of other people's gullibility and also people's desperation. That is taking advantage of their desperation. I get, because of having done hypnotherapy before, that when you do hypnotherapy with someone for free, they're not so invested in the result. Whereas when they've paid £500 or euros, whatever, for a hypnotherapy session, they're a bit more leveraged for it to work.
But this is like everything, because money is a very strong component. So when you charge for something, the money itself gives you a certain extra authority. So it's something that it's in the middle of the equation, in the middle of this contract. So you can leverage that.
So to me, it's just another level. It's another level on top of it, because you've invested into a result.
I agree with you.
And also you kind of committed yourself to it. So I believe in this enough to put my money here, and so this kind of has to work. And if it doesn't, then maybe I'm going to feel stupid, or maybe I'm going to look stupid, or maybe someone's going to say, I told you it was a scam, or, you know, all the kind of things that might come up for you as like, no, this has to work. That's all added on top of it. And so like so many things in life, it becomes your reality, at least for that time, because it has to, because you've really put yourself in a position where it has to be. There can't be, the alternatives are not an option for you.
You know what? In the end, what I think is the following: if you are a person in a position of power, you need to be held accountable for what you say, for what you do, for what you stage. And if you are a person, if you are a client of whatever thing, in general, not just coaches or psychologists or therapists or healings, or in general in life, you are entitled, because you are paying for that, is your money, you are entitled to ask for a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion. You are entitled to doubt any and everything. But you are also entitled to believe it. But it would be great if you could ask yourself, okay, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that? And again, do you really believe that?
There is, I'm aware of time and stuff, but there's so many different elements of these events that are designed, and I guess I'm talking more about the big personal development events now, where these sorts of things go on, that are designed to put you in a position of being influenced and persuaded by them. And, I've been at events where people have said this is mind control. I disagree with that. It's not mind control, but there may be...
We should need to define mind control.
Yeah, you kind of have to define it. It's not how I would define mind control, but there is definitely hidden influence, and sometimes not so hidden influence as well, where you get people up dancing and motivating. So, well, okay, that is actually good for energy in the room, and it is also good for breaking down some inhibitions and stuff as well.
But also might be a technique exactly to lose yourself a little bit and to be prepared.
It is. It's also a thing of like somebody's leading the dance at the front and you're following what they do. You get into this whole of like, follow the leader kind of thing. It's like, okay, but where's the boundaries of that? Is there a purpose to that as well? You end up questioning all these things. There may be. That's one of the things I'm sort of thinking with it. Like some of these events, you have to get yourself, or you're encouraged to get completely into a ramped up emotion. Now, one thing we do know for sure, when your emotions are up there, your intelligence is down there.
Exactly.
So as emotion rises, intelligence falls.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that's how our brains work.
Yeah, exactly.
The two systems just do not play well together.
No.
So events that are designed to get you into that emotional state, can you really trust any of the decisions that you make when you're in that state?
That's the big question.
Isn't it?
That's the big question.
I don't know if we can answer it, but
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But it is really interesting.
It's wonderful. In the end, it is the question.
Yeah. Do you? I'm not going to go on too much longer because we need to go and eat as well. But do you think hypnotherapy is a real thing?
No, I don't.
That's the time, right?
No, I don't. I mean, well, we need to define real thing. I mean, is it a theory? Yes. Is it a serious theory? Some parts, yes. Some parts, no. But the problem with that is the use that you do with the tool. I think that it is very easy for scammers to use it and to take advantage of people, like other tools. By all means, I'm not saying that it is the only one that can cause serious damages, but
it's a big area.
It's a big area.
Maybe the wrong time to ask that question, but
it's a big area because I think that we would need to put examples and to talk a lot about it.
Yeah, and a lot of my stuff comes from experience, and we're going to go out and get some Indian food after this. Stomachs are rumbling already, so we're not going to go on too much longer. But I do think I think we're going to have some more conversations. I hope that's okay.
Probably.
because it's really interesting talking with you, and
Oh, likewise. You know, I enjoy enormously to talk.
I do, and I enjoy it tremendously as well. I don't know what bits I'm going to have to edit out of this podcast yet until I watch it back, but I'm definitely going to have to be a bit careful with some of the things that we've talked about in it. But that's, to me, that's kind of good as well, because we're not playing safe here. We're just talking openly and honestly about real things.
And you know what? It would be great, it would be wonderful if your podcast could make at least one person think more and doubt.
Right.
Only one.
Question things.
One thing, one person, one question. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would be very happy, and would like to hear from that person as well. that'd be great. To me, if this whole conversation has got somebody to think about something, then that's great as well. You know, even if it doesn't change your mind on anything, or but it's maybe got you to think about something, or maybe opened you up to, all right, yeah, I hadn't really thought about things in that perspective before. If we're wrong and you know exactly why we're wrong and you can make your case to us in a respectful way, come and do it. You know, that's what we want to hear. We want to, open to being
conversations.
Yeah, open to being challenged and to being receiving other points of view. That's a big part of what we've been talking about. It would be really fun, and maybe we'll do this, is to maybe lay out a bit more exactly what happens in some of those bigger personal development events, as to how that's used to influence you. And not necessarily to say that that's a bad thing, but just to say, my whole thing of helping people understand more about influence and persuasion is empowerment. Because when you know what it is and what's going on, and you can then take that step back and say, what is the intention here? What are they? What's the outcome that they're going for? Are they just trying to part me with my money, or are they actually? Is this actually beneficial for me and something that's going to be good for me? You can make more informed decisions.
Absolutely.
Even when you recognise you're being influenced, you can then say, do I want to be influenced in this way? Am I going to go along with it?
Yes.
And I think that's what's important here, is just to be able to have a bit more critical thinking about these things, and not just taking everything on face value, asking a few questions and setting yourself up for maybe being a bit less gullible in the world. And that's one of the things, maybe because I have always been so naive and gullible in my life, and hopefully not so much now, but I still couldn't guarantee that that's the case. But I know I've believed things and fallen for things in the past where I think, I should have known that. I should have, looking back, like the signs were there, the clues were there. And maybe that's part of my motivation as well. Like, I want to help other people be not be taken in by tricksters, and not be made to feel gullible and stupid, but to be a bit more informed and to see when those things are happening.
There are two main things here that it would be wonderful if at least one person could, as we said, think again about something, doubt about something, and also at the same time have more trust and confidence on herself or himself, instead of putting all that power on other person. That would be great. It would be great if at least one person could say, okay, I'm not so sure about this. And again, I'm going to think by myself. Even though this so famous, so relevant, so well-known person says that, what do I really believe? What do I really think about? Because in the end, I have the same authority than the other person.
I have a feeling I might be splitting our chat into a couple of episodes, just because
it is too much.
Because
it's
and we've talked
fascinating.
about a lot as well. But for people who've made it through to the end,
Exhausted.
to the end of the conversation, and maybe people are interested in you and knowing more about you and what you do, how could they find out more about you?
Go into my website. It's Maiten Panela, .com, so it's very easy.
Okay, I'll put a link in the
Perfect.
description.
Also on LinkedIn.
Great.
Also
so
on
you can come
LinkedIn.
and find you there.
Again, Maiten Panela.
We're connected there as well, and same for me. If you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I encourage you to connect with me at presentinfluence.com, or come and find my Present Influence page on LinkedIn or in Facebook as well. And that would be the place to leave comments about our chat, about anything you want to feedback. I'm really keen at some point in the future. I want to have a chat with somebody who's been in a religious cult about how they. Ideally someone who got recruited into a cult, about how they got recruited and how they came out of it. To me, that is an important area of influence and persuasion that I really want to examine in one of the podcasts.
So interesting.
And also maybe someone who's had an influence of, an experience of with someone who was a sociopath, who maybe has been quite destructive in their life, where they may be able to come and talk about it, even just vocally, even without the cameras if need be. And
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe giving her or him the possibility of not being...
Or even to have that discussion with somebody like yourself, who has knowledge about the condition and about how that shows up, and what people can do to recognise it, and what they should do if they find themselves in certain situations. Because I think that I see these conversations are happening, and I do think one of the biggest reasons why people are getting scammed and taken advantage of is because there are a lot of unethical people out there, and not saying everyone who's unethical is sociopathic, but maybe levels of sociopathy there, because you have to not give a shit what damage it's going to cause to somebody to be able to do those things in the first place.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that somebody couldn't come back from that or change from that, but I mean, generally, as far as we know, someone who is sort of diagnosably sociopathic, there is no real treatment for that. It's just like that's how they're going to be. That I'm aware of, and I would love to find out different if there is. But those are conversations I'd like to have. So anyone who can connect me up for those sorts of conversations with guests, that's something that would be really interesting, and hopefully really interesting to listeners as well. I'm pretty sure Maiten is going to be back again at some point in the future. It's so much fun to chat. We're going to carry on our conversation with some wine and some Indian food, Rosalie.
Yes.
But I hope this has been a fun conversation for you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a real pleasure to have you as a guest. And
thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Big pleasure.
It's so much fun. There's so many more things we could talk about or go dive deeper into. But this has been good. I think we've scratched the surface on a few things at least. And I think we've given some value as well. So, Maiten, thank you. Thanks once again for joining us for the Loki podcast at Present Influence. If you have enjoyed the conversation today or found value in anything that we've talked about, please do consider liking and subscribing for more similar content to come with more amazing guests. I look forward to connecting with you again in the future, and if you would like to leave any comments or feedback on our video, other than trolling of course, then please come and visit the presentinfluence.com website or find us on Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn.